This is our last one.
Can you send him now?
What?
Sorry, I didn't know that.
No, I was wondering.
It's right on the board.
No, he doesn't have a
Roberto, why do you do this to me?
I saw my brain.
I'll do it. I appreciate it. Oh no, no.
Here we go.
You should have just emailed out. Just tell me if you.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
I can't see this.
Are you doing 8 or 10 minutes faster with the
Very close to the door. Yeah.
One of the colonizers.
Okay. Everybody good?
Yep.
Characters ready? Alright. Contender, what is the Cuban transition? Cuban current reforms are slow, contradictory, and insufficient. The plan is key that shifted around 1015. Cuba's government announced the legalization in 18 categories of private employment. The Obama act of other clean decades failed taking top fast reform goals determine their impact. These important reforms are not results in significant improvements are more difficult reforms to implement. The government's decision to restrict the sale of imported goods shows the contradictory enforcers are unwilling to relinquish their monopoly. All of this, the U.S. is on the outside clean policy written last century. The U.S. could be helping the process and trying to stop the self-employed and obstruct the occupation on skill where its employees are fired. As professional university graduate can't practice self-employment tax avoid murder. The government says contradictory rage, shut down, self-employment Cubans reforms of the deepening accelerate the specialization of Venezuela's rate, filter political change, economic priorities, most welcome rises, normalization of U.S.-Cuban relations, and a total repeal of the embargo is CSG in 13, House Burton codifies U.S. market sanctions, and conditions submitted to the recognition of the transition government, and any time clause will be followed by confrontation with repression, followed by the U.S. domestic pressure, taking sanctions example by the imprisonment of the gross after Obama relaxed family remittance restriction, and policymakers' refusal to pursue and improve relations with responsible ruling, House Burton and bold reformers, democracy, ethics, private entrepreneurs, including external progression will allow the U.S. greater leverage in pursuing the international community. This will transform the dynamic of the Cuban government. The step of isolation will lead to isolation in the international community, and any approach toward the plan results in Castro crackdown on loss of soft power. That's Koenig 10. The U.S. has a policy that would increase soft power and fully governed Cuban government that would represent government Lebanon, easing the sanctions to the new government. The Cuba would adjust to gradual change to maintain control, moving the practice of the market reforms, democratic government. The U.S. should develop a bilateral trade agreement with the global, which is a normal trade relation. The U.S. to gain the soft power. These may present the U.S. with an opportunity to assist market reforms. Cuban companies, budgets, and the government realize they don't have to escape with lost soft power. What's the world clearly not worth in the impact? The Cuban healthcare sector depends on a democratic market-based transition. It's almond and 5 transition may open up roles for NGOs and influence NGOs delayed is limited in Cuba. NGOs can ensure global immunization safety boosted by national regime taking instrumental determining the NGO involvement projects to participate in healthcare. Private sector may be limited to outcome. It's functional political system market emerges. Political triggers the U.S. Russia can increase U.S. trade with you, but the more deterioration in healthcare sector medical infrastructure, they're deteriorating more concerned than technology and the equipment for your basic supplies. Cuba is highly trained scientific medical talent, invest in the infrastructure, foreign firms that access that inexpensive foreign personal living capital, the parties of the stimulating infusion new capital, new participation, the foreign firms allow the expense output in the national marketplace, such opportunities hinge upon the administration degree of openness is positioned towards the rest of the world. And that model stops disease spread worldwide. That's Cooper et al. In 6. The combination community participating property care aggressive public healthcare approach has made the Cuban campaign particularly successful. Cuban early for directly the program is now failure for the place of 50 professional 50 countries Glebrook has developed and improved healthcare service placing fit in the overwhelming role received in the area of affecting disease principles straightforward once the vaccine becomes available the entire address population in the United States vaccine not available to that population is screened true to the transmission pathways mobilizing the local community during effect these activities to eliminate all infectious conditions of the conflict of Cuba to reproduce the health of the world population to be transformed in global pandemics are coming and direct U.S. intervention fails to stop them. That's Weber in 6. Globalization turning the world enormous petri infectious disease vectors reproduce less than 30 minutes in 4 countries. The best ways to reach do not disease everything early warning system. These diseases require significant level of intervention to the very places that don't want it. The most source of that pandemic, the country, the one Western agency in the world is not ready for pandemic. Southeast Asia, 17 Africa, and zoonotic diseases specifically lead to extinction. That's Castaball in 12. Recent decades provided undergoing evidence of blood pathogen caused to single functions responsible for the extinction of numerous species of the diseases. We're not concentrating the predicate notion that the pathogen require the host in some correction that population naturally result not apply to microbes that are directly required from the environment. No need for a host such a fungal pathogen is a hospital kill if from member species are may return to the natural habitat. Acid disease securitization is crucial to solve the case. That's LB and 6. Security can mobilize global response to government when they receive real funds to proper humanitarian initiatives fail to generate civic and political will and resources to be able to interest states and the only strategy left securitizing illness free resources to prevent the transmission of resources necessary to international efforts to respond to global pandemic through logic security funding necessary for our treatment. Thus, applying the United States federal government should initiate the process of allowing a normal trade with the Republic of Cuba. Contention 2 is sustainable agriculture. Cuban agriculture sustainability is failing. Foreign investment is key. That's king. And 12. Cuba needs foreign state facilities to take advantage of co-generation by the potential state control. Some of the recent joint venture invest on oil reels trend to decrease the environmental sustainability. Cuban and Venezuela is bringing in petroleum depends on unstable country for crude driving them need for capital seems to be trying to desire to achieve developmental sustainability. And the plan for rise foreign capital in Cuba allows to be a model to the export global that's goal and control of Cuba as development level takes these services growing demand the U.S. Cuba is in favor of agricultural trade logistics simplicity and cost saving the country eager to enter trade relations and lower transportation costs. They future reforms open the road to invest in transit with Cuba producing forward buyers reforms the opportunities and numerous the investment cooperative sales the return on investment policy trains the many urban farmers like Cuba use organic products crops using raised methods online otherwise incapable of supporting the production of organic products and maintains potential the potential of the future growth of the industry is huge and access the organic Cuban organic product system to great potential and access to the U.S. market is critical to sustainability and emulation as cost and for the successful expansion and viability of production may depend on the geographic coast high and foreign markets national production standards that compatible with the U.S. certification standards and the current U.S. market production costs are high open the U.S. market and enable Cuba to exploit comparative advantage having the U.S. market the created prices of the Cuban crude to meet the standards of other countries. Cuba could expand production geared to the especially export markets oriented production of the necessity driven way to produce food and continue reliance on industrial mechanized that results in catastrophic warming and biodiversity losses comes in time the work globally GDP meter it's food and corporate the industrial farming accounts for 35% USDG mentioned the industrial agriculture the main driver towards the global deforestation while the short-term generate additional 20% GDG industrial farms and 25% carbon dioxide 4% methane and 96% nitrous oxide 300 times more time damaging the carbon dioxide the common scientists underestimate non-CO2 GTs and a move towards organic agriculture negates future emission transforming that scale out and 10 organic agriculture system reduce GT emissions enhance carbon sequestration and contribute organically and a system careful to manage the nutrients production and to which the organic standards include specific climate standards that mention the mineral fertilizer estimated to reduce the agriculture emission by 20%. These are supplemented by the emission compensation potential through carbon sequestration 72% current agriculture emissions the scaling up organic agriculture mode climate friendly farming practices worldwide and cause extinction for degree protection trigger a laundry list of extinction scenarios that's Roberts and 13 to reduce celsius more scientific to predict catastrophic universal impact of production show increase in attempts of frequency high temperature extreme extreme heat with severe rapids causing heat related to forest fires and harmful loss of the impacts potentially see the adaptive capacity in society natural cycle warming 40 degrees lead to increase 150% of the acidity of the ocean bleaching events ocean acidification sea level rise and large fractions of the coral reefs region the closely pointed to the higher seas would exacerbate existing water scarcity existing extreme weather events ecosystem be affected by loss of biodiversity ecosystem service that the new research indicates list of crop yield reduction the world warms large scale displacement of population diverse consequences keeping secret to economic trade system reinforcing the effects running making cycle climate change unstoppable reversible centuries the common warming is anthropogenic most comprehensive analysis today proves that's green 13 scientific consensus happening despite consensus there's wide perception and the scientists disagree 60% of the U.S. public believes there's just disagreement among scientists the scientists overwhelmingly agree that the earth is warming the human activity the number of pages which aging AGW is minuscule proportion the public research and overwhelming percent of the endorse the scientific consensus on the AGW and catastrophic in nature of climate change is crucial to directive action scientific research proves that's Weber and 9 catastrophic nature of climate change the habit the political potential eviscerate reaction to the risk of behavioral decision research suggests that attention capturing emotionally engaging informational intervention the crowd intended to concern that story for individual collective action and responsible global warming science and statistics create familiarity with scientific preservation information moving risk perception beyond the public and that of kind sciences and students interior and environmental issues critical to developing sustainable solutions must be held coupled with policy advocacy in order to succeed that's Cochrane and Al-Qadar and 6 the main aim of environmental education change attitudes change behavior of the future policy makers use responsible to fixing the environment the ones who will crusade and act on with the respective roles of science and ethics is distinct from the complexity each need be acknowledge the limitation of education the shape and so we not have everything we transform political academic social system where we forget the educational part in public advocacy climate solutions key to change governmental policy individual change is insufficient at CAG and 10 the paper martial evidence systemic behavior change necessary including crucial public engagement with policy process policy political leaders regard intent the imperative of public pressure give political place in them enact policy and direct the individual not to represent proportional response to climate change the communicators must be motivated to demand for ambitious policy and prevent the power of zero change to become divergent from the process of bringing political pressure and policymakers to play frustration from the pace of political change to foster acceptance of policy change.
Okay. So what makes zoonotic diseases uniquely bad? Why can't they be quarantined like other diseases?
Okay, so the question of quarantining is distinct from the first question. I'll answer the first question. The castable evidence indicates that zoonotic diseases are distinct because they can survive in their host environments without the host body in particular, which means that burnout theory doesn't particularly apply. And second,
so they can survive without the
so then second, the quarantining argument is not true because the Weber evidence says that the WHO and the US are perceived as Western institutions which aren't let into places that are like anti-Western, like Sub-Saharan Africa
but
or
given,
Southeast Asia.
given that your evidence about like Cuba being able to solve is all talking about how the population the population at risk would all get vaccinated and or quarantined. That's what's good about Cuba's healthcare system. If zoonotic diseases can survive without the host body, then why do you solve?
Right, so they can exist without the host body, i.e., once they've thrived, they can kill their host and still survive.
What piece
However,
of evidence do you read
if there are
says that Cuba has the
vaccines-
technique to... You read evidence that says that Cuba has good and awesome abilities to respond once there's a population at risk. What piece of evidence do you read which says they can detect populations at risk?
So even if that's the Cooper evidence, it says that there are two principles to the area of infectious diseases at once. Is that if a vaccine becomes available, the population is immunized, but if a vaccine is not available, the susceptible population is screened and treated, so we can isolate the diseases and prevent them from spreading until we develop the vaccines.
Agriculture
Sure.
advantage.
Okay.
Cuban agriculture sustainability is failing. Foreign investment is key. Why aren't other countries investing in Cuba's agriculture?
Well, that's kind of the problem right now. So, well, sort of. The King evidence talks about why Cuba is going to Venezuela for things like petroleum as well as petrochemicals that
your evidence
they're
is
using in their agricultural industry, which means that they're not sustainable now.
Exactly.
However,
What piece of evidence do you which says that post-plan Cuba will be able to shift away from those things?
So, is a question, the King evidence says that is true because the current model is not sustainable and is not profitable for those companies because they don't have the markets, which is the cost evidence, which is also a reason why other countries aren't investing now because it's not perceived as a cost-effective model.
I guess if that's the case and Cuban agriculture is not sustainable, what incentives would other countries have to model Cuba post-plan? I understand you read this piece of Shkolnik evidence, which is like foreign capital means countries like Cuba's model, but if Cuba is perceived as an environmentally unsustainable country, what would happen?
The model itself is distinct from the investment with Venezuela that's happening now. The model isn't
your evidence is very clearly Cuba's
right.
building petrochemical
The evidence is
facilities
saying that
in
the
Cuba.
model is being tainted by this investment with Venezuela, right? That is resulting in petrochemicals that mean that they are not ecologically sustainable.
The King evidence doesn't say Venezuela in it.
Yeah, it does. Cuba's agreement with Venezuela is
the bottom of it's Cuba's trade agreement with Venezuela. What evidence do you say plan stops Cuba trade agreement with Venezuela?
The reason, the line above that, the recent surge in joint venture investment on oil fields. Okay, that's fine.
I'm setting it up now. Do you all want to get an email chain? Sure. Okay. Can I get? Yeah. Yeah, I have these.
It's ROBMULHOLAMD @gmail.
Stephen Weil at Gmail. Stevens with a PH. Weil is WEIL.
Thank you. Sorry.
Just set it up.
Oh, the time. Do you even worry?
Oh no, it's 5 off, the transition advantage and the agriculture advantage.
5 off?
Mm-hmm. Y'all ready? Economic engagement, the quid pro quo, shit 96, institution calling engagement, all 2 lines, economic engagement, security engagement, economic engagement, product integration, through negotiation, trade levelization, institutionality, education, shit, the kitchen, getting temperate time, equivalent in carrying things, policy, foreign policy action, economic engagement, all first, Mr. temperate time, violation, the app, you not engage with Cuba, not a quid pro quo, vote neg, what is limits, there are new information, 1 exception affirmative, conditioning forces and practice deals, Cuba will actually accept 2 as ground, unconditional engagement, does Aussie say no, and black are crucial part of this year's engagement, next off is the critique, the affirmative attempt to seal humanity off from existential risk is grounded in fear and grounded in in fear contingencies that a world denies all that makes life worth living. There's no alternative. Embrace the status quo. Listen about 94. What we think about human beings, sits on caring deeply. They themselves do not control. Who refuse to love or other things in the way that risk serious pains and loss. Who engulfed with hardness of self-command and will work against all reverses of life and bring order, morality, one finitude. The limit to vulnerability to one body, needing food and drinking, shelter and water. There is strength in the willingness to form attachment that can go wrong, cause deep pain in the willingness to invest itself in the world of strength of willingness to be poor rather than holy heart and willingness to be an immortal animal living in the world of person who is determined steals and sells often risks even at the cost of love and value, other willingness or certain form of self-protection and fear of this world of contingencies and incompatible deep sort of laws of other person or political. Next off. Normalizing economic relations with Cuba causes U.S. domination of Cuba's rice market. Jackson 11. Under normal commercial relations, Cuba become overnight the largest market for U.S. grown rice in the world, leaving sanctions to enable Cuba from battle rice from the nearby supply, shipping time, storage, and transportation costs. And Cuba is the key rice market for Vietnam, but the U.S. would crowd them out. Nielsen and Ford. The U.S. will capture a large market of the world's rice trade, much longer expansion than national origin than Vietnam established reputation. Cuba, according to Vietnamese rice export, Cuba is known for low quality, low grain, long grain rice in Vietnam are main suppliers, and rice exports are key to the Vietnamese economy. Young and old, and through Vietnamese cross-sector, more than 85% rice, the most important sector to the economy. Rice alone is greedy to half all employment, and 1/6 of national employment, at 25% of the total, 25% of the total export rally. And Vietnamese economic collapse is a scene. In 10, with warnings of independence, custody go weaker as the weak economy is serious not only for Vietnam but for all the members of Asian. The Vietnamese economic collapse is always possible for the region, especially Asian, just as Russia, Greece, and Ireland. The EU voice of Vietnam already identified something to take in leadership. The same behavior over Poland and East Germany. And Asian solves multiple nuclear conflicts. A PDFA and 3 Asian nuclear need cooperation. Top flash around the world found in Asia. Tensions between demonstrates self-sovereignty, South Asia, all which have but beside nuclear dimension, Asian files, and the hardware organization in the Asian states. What we have is the Asian has seen health, free tension, and vending with security issue can be discussed. Next off. Counterplan text. The United States federal government ought to offer to initiate the process of allowing normal trade relations with the Republic of Cuba if and only if the governments of Brazil, Chile, and Mexico agree to commit actively seeking a national relations process in the United States and Cuba, and to compelling Cuban government to work towards establishing representative democracy and better effect for human rights. And the Counterplan solves and ensures hemispheric commitment to democracy. The plan alone causes black backsliding. Casting 8 and 9. If Obama lifts the embargo unilaterally, send a message to Latin America, then democracy not only available, if member ways to circle, nothing expected from Cuba exchange for limiting the embargo. Key Latin American players committed an organization forcing Cuba to establish a representative democracy, Brazil, Chile, and Mexico forcing the commitment to democracy with Latin Americans toward the principles since Obama tried the table policy shift and exchange for Latin dedication to democracy. And Latin America push for hemispheric democracy, critical global democracy. Cuba is a key starting point. Gershman 12. Democracy needs support for the U.S., but the lead must come from Latin America, killing consistent Latin America voice with democracy around the hemisphere. A study about uncertain democratic process in Latin America, important meaning for the future of democracy around the world, the struggle of democracy, and the atmosphere influence advances taking place at what fight for democracy in Cuba, and democracy self extinction, Diamond 95. The Anglo chemical biological weapons should link the very global ecosystems between data and security, or the absence of democracy, government cells, democratic fashion, not go over with another build weapon mass destruction, the more environmentally responsible once answered their own setting. Next off. Counterplan text. The United States federal government should initiate the process of allowing restricted trade with the Republic of Cuba. This should include lifting a substantial portion of its economic sanctions on the Republic of Cuba. The United States federal government should not end the prohibition of tobacco products of Cuban origin. And this is competitive. The 1AC transition advantage says a total repeal is here. Their evidence is bad, just as lifting Holmesburg and Cuba, the Counterplan does. But it does prove competition because they have to defend the entire lifting of the entire embargo. And it solves even if all the U.S. sanctions are bad. The cigar ban is uniquely good. Colons and total prohibition taking place for many years with respect to Cuban cigar organizations. The U.S. should make every effort to prohibition the effect of Cuban cigars and other tobacco products irrespective of the comprehensive economic sanctions against Cuba, and lifting the tobacco sanctions massively benefits the Cuban cigar industry. The U.S. cigar market is key for them. Belier and Cuban cigars jump in price. The U.S. and the embargo on trade is permit the sales meant for Cuban cigars overnight, double overnight consumer demand. The same global cigar prices out of the entire industry would benefit the end of the embargo. The U.S. and most European cigar market. The consumer wants Cuban cigars. Everyone would be buying and increased cigar sales. The U.S. has massive deforestation, kills the Cuban environment, which is a biodiversity hotspot. Frankenberry 3. The unique competitions of the soil of Cuba, one tropical climate makes a unique hospitality environment for the plants to stay removed and Cuban products recognize number of like magnitude production environmental problem, deforestation, tobacco plant diversity, type 22 resource impact and the effect deforestation and Cuban deforestation. And biodiversity loss causes extinction. Diner 94. The environment of the world survival like all animals, human lives off the other species that tunnel point, the number of species decline to point at which the ecosystem fail, human government extinction, allowing certain species to go extinct, not be sound policy ecosystems, or inherently more stable, less diverse systems, more complex ecosystem, more susceptible to distress, even the animal, or plant extinction with all differently perceived intertwined effects, the also ecosystem collapse, and human extinction. Transition advantage. Gradualism term. Cuban reforms are successful now, but the plan puts them in overdrive. There's collapse of the transition. Picon and Club Castro come to move Cuban from the host of the tenants of possibility can take on economic reforms or does we need to enact changes to going through optimism with Cuban economic future Castro should remove Cuba from equality to all community reform transmission to create potential to stabilize the regime. And communication term. The plan results in increased media access and open flows of communication to Cuba. That causes chaos and destroys governmental control. Pascal and Stanley, potential causes open flows of communication, making over control of the population, making U.S. sanctions would make it harder to take to the U.S. Expectation to be worsened if the U.S. has a loose restriction more conflict or the demand for jobs increase, feeding remittances already creating disparities in Cuba, not undertake broader reform. The exodus here and normalized this causes healthcare workers to leave Cuba in mass. That collapses their healthcare model. Garrett and if Washington lifted the embargo loss in Cuba, expected healthy exodus here, the healthcare worker decision would be a risk of completely collapse of embargoes in addition. The result in thousands of talented professionals leaving Cuba. The public achievement in the healthcare sector results in new promotion preventing disease and illness in Cuba, exporting healthcare nation. The world over the chain normalization relation with Cuba, kill that nation, and human diversity, medicine, evolution, limits check disease. Glebrook 95. Every infectious agent that ever plagued humanity has been adopted strategy, but this makes human counterattack possible. If it's a virus and human human, then not do everything at once. People traveling, living more different combinations, gene pools, making new intermarriage, and no extinction. McPhee and Bar's NDA. The facts indicate that natural population bounce back after higher losses. These spreading across the citrus is impossible, and it is not only pathogen intrinsic to all large number of kill species because when it occurs, only survival pathogens tend to evolve in the United States. They need infect and not to kill. Act.
Can you read the? Sorry. Can you read the?
Oh, sorry. Go back to the other branch. Human healthcare is useless. Corruption, equivalent shortages. Sanchez and 11 among recent hospital cuts. The doctor must reduce allocation. Consult the most common neurosurgeon doesn't have an aspirin. Or the care can make it safe. Exacerbation to families, medical personnel, and stuff. They go being defrauded by a complex. Sorry. Agribusiness during the plant caused the Cuban market to be flooded by U.S. companies that destroyed their organic agriculture model. Gonzalez and 3 embargo gave Cuba a free rented all agricultural policy to encounter the new liberal model Cuba sees against in diversification suits fails substantially undercutting the embargo, but presented enormous challenge for the retention of agricultural development model. And there's global sustainable agriculture already now. Rio Toledo and 11 agriculture agroecology funding scientific methodological technologies and new agrarian revolution mobilization biodiversity resilient energetically efficient initiative and transforming industrial agriculture. And there's a laundry list of all causes anyway. Tips in and we face a transition from food shortage more towards food shortage, population trends, climate change, water shortage, erosion, soil erosion, contamination, increase, meat consumption, fishery depletion, danger, lives of academics, serious crop failures, and cascading ripple effects will strain a very vulnerable economy's political system. Also, they can't solve warming. China overwhelms. Had it and climate change maybe the world collective problem, and no countries acting alone can reduce greenhouse gas enough without China to the U.S. can force carbon emission. Also, NASA aqua satellites to prove their impact. McShane and carbon levels increase the law of diminishing effect on increasing CO2 concentration, generating proportional increases in temperature. Why talk about the CO2 the temperature smiling when there are evidence? The alarming signal of increasing CO2 leads more water vapor. This provides positive feedback. They provide the positive feedback about the famous tipping point. The IPCC model is not to the predicted causes. The accuracy model assume the water vapor goes to the troposphere, hangs around. The mechanism that washes out the water vapor turns into the ocean with an extra CO2 and thus turns the added water vapor negative feedback mechanism. The author of the IPCC chapter of just measure agreeing he is right. The climate is not highly sensitive to CO2. The new NASA aqua satellites. The first to measure the effect of cloud and rainfall. Sensor interpretation of the UV data means all previous model forecasts are obsolete.
Wait. So the K, so if extinction happens, how do we enjoy our lives?
Argument is that if it's better, the judge should ethically orient themselves. So if extinction is inevitable, we can't do anything about it.
Wait. So where have you jumped to this extinction inevitable claim?
Because you can't solve the affirmative. The affirmative will not be fiated in time.
That's not
right. Your claims about disease are really. Sorry.
That's not like a claim as of the 1NC shell, nor is it a claim in the evidence.
I mean,
where that evidence or claim is coming from.
I mean, argument is that the only important thing is how you ethically relate yourself. So death is coming.
Okay. QBQ
counterplan.
counterplan. Status of the counterplans.
Status quo is also an option.
All right. So the past relaxing of remittance and family restrictions. Why didn't that lead to a democratic backsliding?
Sorry. Oh, our evidence is that a total lifting.
No, it's not. The Castaneda evidence is in the context of
but
why,
the
if we let Cuba off the hook.
Latin America's democracy is not as bailiwick. That's about lifting a large number of sanctions.
So why is that true? Why is that warrant true?
Why is that warrant true?
Yeah.
Our evidence indicates that would make Obama look weak.
So why didn't the remittance restrictions and relaxing them make him seem weak?
Well, firstly because he did that in reaction to reforms by Raul.
That's not true.
Reforms by Raul. Two
Yeah.
is that our evidence is about lifting of the embargo. The embargo obviously carries a lot more weight than a few restrictions on travel
okay.
because
So
that was a 50-year-long
all right.
policy.
So why is democratic commitment from Cuba, etc., crucial to global democracy?
The Gershman evidence indicates that democracy worldwide looks to Latin America because it's right next to the U.S. The U.S. needs to control its sphere of influence in places
Why
like
is
Latin
proximity
America.
crucial in geopolitics?
Our evidence indicates that other countries perceive Latin America as the key point of next to the U.S.
Why does proximity matter?
If the U.S. can't promote democracy in its own backyard, then it can't promote democracy internationally.
Okay, I guess that kind of makes some sense to me. Let's talk about the cigar pick. So, why do cigar sales lead to such a ridiculous amount of deforestation that it collapses
we really do a bunch of
hotspots?
evidence in the block that indicate that.
So you haven't had one as the 1NC?
No, our evidence actually is quite good, but the question you asked is that there's there's a distinction level here. Our evidence indicates that it would be enough to cause mass deforestation and collapse the environment in Cuba. However,
So
be, like,
the
quantitative
Mueller
evidence
evidence
blocked.
says that cigar sales would benefit and that prices would increase, but why haven't status quo sales of cigars have triggered this deforestation impact?
I figured you'd ask. The Mueller evidence, and we'll read more evidence if we need to. That evidence still makes a claim that the Cuban cigar industry is failing now because of a lack of demand, because the U.S. is the biggest.
Really,
cigar market.
where's a line in that evidence that says that? All right.
No, you're right. That part doesn't
Yeah,
say
that's
that.
awkward. Rice just said real quick, the Jackson evidence says that from 2002 to 2006, we exported 635,000 metric tons of rice. Why didn't that trigger the collapse of Vietnam's economy?
Sorry. Repeat the question?
I'll take, we're
Yeah.
prepping, right? Here's Okay, so Jackson evidence from 2002 to 2006, we exported 635,000 metric tons of rice, or rather, we usurped that away from Vietnam's market. Why didn't that trigger the collapse of their economy?
But our evidence is that in the long term.
For
Vietnam
4
is-
years isn't long term, so that's the break for
Right.
the decide. More than
That's
4
not
years.
the argument. That one wasn't over 4 years. Two, our argument is that the U.S. is not the main producer of rice for Cuba right now because of economic sanctions. Vietnam is, because Cuba has a high demand for low quality long grain rice, which the U.S. would then supply.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't realize anyone had updated housing impact since Rob Rotten on 92. That's a classic. Yeah.
Actually, no. Just,
Alright, stop over.
631. Just 630.
You're ready to go.
Transition, ag, T, K, the cigar pit, the conditioning on democracy counterplan, the rice exports dissent.
What was the grade of the case? Sorry. Transition ag.
Transition ag.
Okay. Just waiting for it to load. Account temporarily locks down. Unusual usage. That's crazy.
I know Edelman did the
Because he used normal in the plain text. Last time we didn't.
So we're gonna have a debate on counterplan
Oh,
computations.
so then, maturity.
I sent it.
Hang on.
Do you think anybody's watching this round? Like how many people?
Let's check.
He texted me before the round and says he's watching.
Oh really? Cool. Can I let this go? I'm gonna grab it.
Thank you.
There are currently 43 people watching this round.
That's impressive. Ethan Carrollton versus Lex. So that's something.
So that's good. It's good debate.
Oh yeah, so
All right. Are we good?
Zoonotic diseases outweigh they evolve without a host. That's when I see cast of all evidence fastest internally to escalation because you can't negotiate with a group. The gradualism term reforms are failing in the status quo. The shifter evidence goes a step further and says that despite improvements in the economy, some aren't going far enough because the universities and tax exports people aren't getting to economic factors. The plan causes a leap iron and fosters stability, solves the disad Lopez Levy 2013. The emerging model of bureaucratic policy is not insulated from the lead sensitivities, marketization, liberalization, great opportunity to integrate actions that could lead to meaningful changes in given market oriented given economy will major deterrent against violence. There are numerous examples of the positive repercussion of market economy has for civil society. Their evidence is highlighted out of existence. The CSG evidence says we promote representative democracy, which solves the internal link to this disad. The communications turn. Obviously, this is not unique because we've increased funding. We've relaxed remittances to Cuba. The plan solves for communication because it solves representative democracy. That is the Lopez Levy evidence from the 1AC. Additionally, there's no internal link from communication to total Cuban collapse because it's just one sector of the economy proves the overwhelming nature of the plan solves the diseases turn. The Cuban healthcare fails now. That's plan 2013 challenges remain. Healthcare may be free. Medications, not pharmacies, or early stock rationing supplies in minimal hospitals and located organizations. Cuba's dual economy has a lot to do with such severity. Medication is available only to pay for American dollars, or the poor are very unlikely to have. It proves that the only overwhelming nature of the embargo is stifling disease. The Garrett evidence is a description of the status quo. The plan solves the Ullman evidence says we solve vaccines and NGO export policy, which solves the arguments. Yes, impact of diseases gladly. All evidence is a Washington Post writer. We have science on our side says it evolves too quick for people to take it out like vaccinations. Your evidence isn't specific to zoonotics. The healthcare industry is good. It promotes an NG export model. That's Ullman evidence is better than yours. Your hers is highlighted out of existence. I'll answer this argument when it becomes an argument in the block. The agriculture just said warming causes extinction, destroys the carrying capacity of the biosphere. That's the Roberts evidence group. The agriculture term we control uniqueness is collapsing now because lack of foreign investment. Even themselves have an agriculture model they can't export it. That's the cost evidence plans. Key to Cuban agriculture exports. They have a comparative advantage in sustainable agriculture. That's cost evidence modeling. Plan allows override adoption of the Cuban model. It's cost effective, which means they latch on solves the China warrant. That's shown like evidence. Cuba can now compete only to the Gonzales evidence because about GMOs. We wouldn't adopt those because it's cost comparative. Canal 2009. Many worry about whether Cuba will be able to maintain its commitment to urban agriculture and sustainable methods as the country enters into global economy and faces pressures to restructure. So Washington year's decision to lift the embargo will open up trade relations, threatens local food production. Cuba's success in the agriculture industry makes it a substantial contender in the market's products are competitively priced. Cuban agriculture should serve as a model. There is no agriculture now. It's not going to everywhere. It's failing due to Venezuelan pullout and a bunch of uniqueness warrants that they don't answer. The plan outweighs the all costs as we result in carbon sequestration. That is the scholarly lab evidence from the 1AC. The plan it's a latches on to a cost comparative model. Also the China war and NASA votes half. Penn State analysis prove the warming is good. Now I'm going to read a card that non-unique solve your disads economist 4 or 5 on March 29th.
Cuba's gradual empowerment approved a new foreign investment law that allows Cubans living abroad to invest. The aim is to raise foreign investment to about $2.5 billion a year. The law offers generous tax breaks and requires employers to hire workers via state employment. That shall depend on how the government implements the law. It doesn't solve the app because you have to have further market liberalization. That's the element evidence. We'll also submit a graph for the record. It's from The Economist, and it's very good. Non-unique or dissatisfied plan solves soft power. That's Service 2009. U.S. census stamp out a peer competitor. Peer competitor stamp out terrorism, threat democracy. U.S. cannot act alone. International cooperation is the only route to success. Countries contribute around the dollar. Catching their holding short actions may be necessary to apply sanction coordination, give credibility to American nuclear goals. Depend on persuading building the world. U.S. seeks is a test for unilateral measures on suit success requires other nations to lead leadership is binding. That's the best internal link to democracy because people will latch onto our security guarantees. Topicality, counter-intervention, uncondo. Smith 2005 engagement entails building economic linkages. Conditionality is the linking of perceived benefits to the other state fulfillment. Economic political condition engagement applies size with no strings attached. Conditionality attaches a string for our interpretation over limiting disad and their interpretation questions the vast majority of Cuban Venezuela asset-based checks. Nature embargo proves we have to read the app unconditionally for third F particularly solves your impact. We didn't make the bid impossible. Don't vote us down. Don't let topicality become a question of counterplan competition. The process of normalization can include a lot of things, but that process of normalization is unconditional. So we're topical, but we don't. We are not going to mess up on your theory arguments. Critique. No alt, no specific link argument, no chance. We justified our death impacts. Warming securitization is good. Life has an intrinsic objective value that's kaku. Finding good cannot exist in a world without life. There's no pressure consciousness. It's simply experience like the things pressure is the core explanation. Goodness, life, what we value may go well beyond pleasure. Stop the card of pleasure. There's no alternative. It proves the conditionality is a voting issue because they've introduced three ethical frameworks into the 1AC. Subpoint A is fairness, cross application to prevent and deter 2AC often skills affirmative strategy. Subpoint B is education trades off with in-depth specific analysis creates a run and gun approach to advocacy proves they never solve counter interpretation. One conditional option solves all your offense even if they were dispo. Dispo forces big permutations. We probably didn't ask. Now the cigar pick. The plan solves the terminal impact because of environmental leadership. Cigar industry is resilient and expanding. That's Frank 214. Cigars in tobacco are on the rise as we're calling it hard times due to smoking bans. International financial crisis. The Cuban cigar market rollout 8.51 million smokes last year. Partial recovery is due to largely growing demand in Asia. The huge domestic demand shown as signs of slowing. About 300 million were produced last year. There's no internal link to deforestation. It's just one internal link. Multiple alternative causalities outweigh permutation due to the counterplan. It's an example. The F normalization doesn't commit to a total holistic process, which proves that their interpretation of counterplan competition is bad. Permutation do both also linked to that benefit because the process of normalization could include not lifting the Cuban cigar ban. Plan solves environmental leadership. That's Canal 2009 lifting the embargo to open up a constructive partnership between Cuba and the U.S. by developing compatible sustainable environmental policies. Cuba become a model for environmental protection on the global scale. Cut the card at global scale. Environmental leadership solves all your impacts. This cost of 2009 rejuvenated America be the turning point. We hope the U.S. will become a leader in efforts to address the threats confronting the survival of the human species and inspire the U.S. to do a lot to spur the international community interaction. The U.S. for the you go first attitude is blocking progress, positive interaction. The U.S. could provide the guide, catalyst, logjam in negotiations. Not be difficult to break. The U.S. its interest converges in global good. The oceans on land by regenerating soils, forests, and rivers. The atmosphere by reducing the emissions of pollutants. Additionally, normalization is a process. The counterplan doesn't compete. Afghani 2006 normalization process involving recognition of the need for measures to reduce tensions of rural relations, sources of dispute is a product of conflict, shifting political and diplomatic compromise. No impact to the environment because they act as alternative cause. No impact to their environment internally. Yes, impact to ours. Ours is about global leadership. Yours is about specific hotspots which don't cause extinction because there are other hotspots. Other counterplan. Perm to the counterplan is an example of implementation of the affirmative since we don't have to be tied to certainty. The permutation is also a permutation of uncertainty, which proves it's not severance. Was always expressed by a form of vote. This quote from Webster's 98 and should is using a mandatory mandatory, it's not permissive. That's a quote from Webster and phrases 02. Democracy is fine. Latin American countries would never adhere. That's Nicola. 2012 U.S. diplomacy made an attempt to intimidate able leaders who felt strong about their Cuban fear. Chavez expressed resolute opposition to isolating command and warned the U.S. position prompted outrage against Latin America. U.S. pressure led to able countries to consider shunning foreign ability. The U.S. was undemocratic and one country should not be allowed to impose approaches. Latin America signed paid a visit for apologize. The situation was owed entirely to U.S. unilateralism. South Dakota to U.S. unilateralism. Cuba vetoes conditional reform. Empirics prove that specifically in the case of the embargo attempts to engage in Cuba demanding reciprocal action. Enhance Cuba the policy. That's right. The only way we can keep full control of the process lifting the unilaterality. Obama fell into the trap of previous administration by demanding reciprocity. The demand for reciprocity enhanced Cuba. The veto policy used a short circuit moderation. Lifting the embargo would unleash a new dynamic of full part of responsibility for Cuban rights violations, economic failures, scrolling Cuban leaders, the counterplans, fiats, a voting issue, multi-actor, fiat, skirt solvency deficit, skills, cost benefit analysis proves the F will always be ahead. Latin American countries say no because Nicaragua will never agree with the plan. The process of normalization could include this counterplan. It links to all of the dissets because it still does something to Cuba. Rice exports disset. All causes to Vietnam's economy. SES oil, also economic collapse that already happened, should have triggered the impact. Vietnam's economy because territorial disputes are inevitable. Daewoo 2011, the South China Sea dispute has become a open party. U.S. invited the biggest allure for the party's oil. The Vietnamese economy depends on the South China Sea oil production, which accounts for 30% of GDP. Vietnam economy will collapse if it loses oil assets. Vietnam is in dire straits. The inflation is running rampant while the price index rose. So the credit price impact. There's no impact to Aishan because nobody agrees with their priorities. Diploma in Klama 2011. Aishan resembles a convoy that moves at the speed of its slow slow a ship. The diversity to break a concerted action includes preventive diplomacy. Asian's consensus-based decision-making gives each metaphor an effective veto over decision regarding the organization agenda. Authority rests within the government. Some foreign ministers of each a member state member should have no desire to cultivate an independent activist. Asian Secretary of the Asian Security General has a very limited role. Additionally, economy is already terrible now. The Euro link doesn't overcome it. That's Fuller. 423. Vietnam is facing a rising anger over slumping economy derived by traditionalists who want to maintain the country's guiding principles. Monopoly over power. The power struggle to reckon the society is better, inform more critical because of news and opinions that spread through the internet. Circumventing state-controlled news media evidence economic progress may make it hard to understand deeper pessimism that many express in the country. Go back to the counterplan. They're obviously going to counter-define a lot of words. They're not going to be able to counter-define allow in the initiation of normalized trade relations. Here's the process the app could be included in the counterplan. We can have a counterplan competition debate.
Cool. Conditionality. How do we have three counterplan?
Well, three ethical frameworks.
How do we have three ethical frameworks?
You made an argument about death and how life's not meaningful. One ethical framework, and then one about like deforestation, why the environment's important. Policy
A
framework.
creates that framework because you also read a dissent based off of saving lives.
But they didn't say life is bad.
Right, but you said that trying to preserve it is bad.
We said that trying to preserve it.
Cool. Topicality. The economic engagement definition. It's in context of engagement. Do you have a piece of evidence that says economic engagement is unconditional?
Yeah, that's myth evidence. Good.
The evidence indicates that engagement at large is unconditional. Do you have a piece of evidence that speaks to the question of economic engagement?
You can stick us to the Smith evidence. It says conditionality is the linking of benefits to another state, which is the affirmative.
Okay, cool. The Cornell evidence indicates that Cuban agriculture model, quote unquote, should serve as a model. Do you have a piece of evidence that says that it will serve as a model?
Yeah, it's showing like evidence from the NDCA. It's cost comparative. People latch on to the export models because it's economically sustainable. Like, there's a reason to.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the cigars counterplan. You have evidence that says normalization is a process. Why does the 1AC use the word normalization? It uses normal trade relations.
It just proves that normal trade can be a bunch of different things. We shouldn't be stuck to
Normalization
exactly.
equals normal trade relations? That doesn't really make any sense.
Well, it's just defining what normalization is. Like you're going to say
why
it
is that
means
relevant to
this.
what the counterplan does?
Well, it proves that the scope of the app could include mandates in the counterplan.
What does that even mean? Like scope of the app? The app does.
NTR could be a bunch of different things. We'll specify for dissect competition, but for counterplan competition, we're not going to specify because we think that's a bad model of debate. Like we had a really good debate at the Harvard tournament when you went for like a good critique. Now we're just going to have a dumb counterplan debate.
Let's talk about the communications turn. You make an argument about why we've relaxed some of these already. Does it indicate, our evidence indicates that a total lifting of the embargo would do something? Do you have a piece of evidence that says that it would necessarily trigger what the Pascal evidence is?
Well, I mean, I read a link non-unique argument. Like Cuba's open to FDI, so that non-unique's your argument irrespective of whether it's about the embargo because they've opened up to investment, which means there would be more communication, which means the impact should already be triggered. Plan solves because it promotes representative democracy.
Your environmental impact and our environmental impact. Our evidence indicates that it's a hotspot that will spread globally.
Yeah, no hotspots because they act as all causes to themselves. The Great Barrier Reef will never be touched because Australia protects it. Ours is distinct. The causal evidence is specific to a rejuvenated American action on environmental policies, causes other countries to latch on because they would adhere to Pigovian taxes or something that the U.S. does to spur further environmental action.
Cool. Cuba's healthcare model is failing now. How does the plan resolve that?
Ullman evidence is specific to the NGO export policy and how if we lift the embargo, it allows enough FDI and enough supplies and medicine for those doctors to go abroad to solve an outbreak.
There's a shortage of personnel that exists in the status quo. How does the plan solve that?
The plan, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Your evidence indicates that there's a shortage of personnel that exists in the status quo, like Cuban doctors. How does the plan solve that?
Well, the plan allows people to get into Cuba, and they already have enough doctors right now. I don't think that card is I don't think that's the correct characterization of that evidence.
What was the permit on the conditions counterplan? Sorry. Do the counterplan right?
Yeah, do the counterplan and do both.
Oh. Stop right. Stop right. Just center. T critique, transition advantage, agriculture advantage, Vietnamese risks. Sorry, one more time. T critique, transition, ag, Vietnam.
That's true. Can't rule out possible.
Actually, I need another second code. I'm sorry. Had to happen. Stop right. 622 left. I'm gonna resend this.
New doc.
Yeah, you know. I'll include everything else that was in.
Okay.
Send it. Same order though.
I gotta pull up. Just
Oh, okay, sure. Economic engagement is a type of conditional engagement and must involve a quick correlation. The as conditional engagement is distinct now. Their counterdiction, their Smith evidence is the context of defining engagement at larger. Haas, our Schmidt evidence says that economic engagement is distinct as a subset of conditional engagement which must include bargaining and whatever codes you have. You should default to specificity. You should default to specificity and can define our evidence. Their evidence is the context of defining economic engagement, strategies towards Korea, whereas ours is defining the term of art now. Their counterdiction is backward made massively under limits because it allows for both conditional and unconditional acts that rules that all elementary are interpretations. There are not constrained by state arguments which limit us small acts that don't do anything now. The over limiting is better than under limiting. Their integration disincentivizes enough made pure the possibility proof for the infinite amount of actions to negativize the process counterplans that destroy public education, plan education, small topic means better depth of education, a broader range of education down through the news, but depth is the only way to master knowledge applied outside of now. Education is too important to fairness, inside the room now. They say that the base plan it does, and here's proof they'll advertise a random unilateral measure CSC 15 degrees. The non-urban system, the cultural naturals make other shop NGOs establish licenses, authorized imports and export services, artificial food, but keeping software based on ratios, travel licenses. They say that African check is not what you do, it's what you justify. She's evidence proves that you advertise small acts. Now, the vulnerability can now go for permutations, just permutations if they made one are just as competition. However, our insert conditionality here, conditionality is good. Advocacy tills multiple worlds are necessary to simulate real world attacks, policies, effective advocacy, and that's policy requires means of a constant coherent position in the face of multiple contradicting positions. Also justifies our multiple ethical frameworks because real world policies are attacked from neocons to the right who think that the free market is everything, and also people on the left who think that socialism is awesome. Now, negative flexibility, enormous research got structural disparity, mixed negative and reactionary. We should have multiple conditional options to respond to permutations and add-ons
of relationship levels, limiting conditionality allows the act of blessing the next if they can weigh their well-researched against a few flimsy negative axes that critical thinking, conditionality for the axis like the best to see argumentations and I do institute for decisions, hard fast, is good. Now, they are more conditional, they do not specify their agent which allows, or do station just killer ground independent voting issue now. Permutations also check multiple permutations, purpose lever, negative strategies too, and makes the conditional just about is not worse conditionality or now reject the status of survival of some conditionality and the best reason rejecting does not ensure the practice of worse thing success with an now evaluate theory situationally. We should not have to lose. We should not lose because we justify 10 capitalists only hold us what we did in this round. 2 conditional advocacies says a limit on to be stereotypes about compromise don't make us defend conditionality in extremes. Now conditionality also forces the AF argument a responsibility because they have to defend their case from multiple different from multiple different perspectives. Now the transition advantage. Gradualism term control unique gradual forms are having now with the plan would rapidly reform Cuba's economy, causing instability. Be a certain faction the communist party would fight or economic agencies to turns the advantage because liberalizing economy too quickly causes total state collapse. So Cuba does not need the U.S. They can make establishments on their own Koenig. Whereas you want to see how they're 10. The U.S. continue with the current policy. No secret required. Cuba can contain in order to the U.S. Cuba will towards China as well to develop relations with trade and tourism. Cuba will develop relations with Canada and the EU. Now not normalizing aid relations now is best prevents Cuban state collapse and allows for normalization in the long term. Once Castro leaves power and Diaz-Canel fills in, that means the Central South Gap George 15 Castro appointed Diaz-Canel leader, the younger, the research more economy created opportunity use, new normalizations of Diaz-Canel will continue, Raul's response to getting liberalizations, system settle, where practices and represents briefing new revolutionary leaders, a region for any response to Diaz-Canel, but drawn to hold hardline reforms, and being irreversible now. They say transitions failing, but it's working now. Evidence is written in Paris, Law, and Cuba's, and I'm focusing on what is new, is the perception again, force president of Canada, the infancies, government force, just designed to improve productivity, reduce employment, peaceable, guarantee greater harmony, those targeting self-employed workers will have a good effect. The openness for the creation by enterprise product source and new tax reform reforms is announced that state must really control the centers not seem home bleed to mean expecting new opportunities to the economy. These measures will, if you were to take our side of the direction, also most recent evidence previous tourists will 25 the human quarter Mario government hosting in the plus foreign outflow Mario problem solver where foreign companies will be able to invest in set of Mario will be free from over 7% state if what's the problem economy as well as reforms are revitalizing people believe do more freedom travel unified currency and great opportunities. There is another piece of evidence, but our point is that liberalization of the market, further liberalization of the market is rather liberalized now. However, the plan causes even more rapid reforms, causes instability because different factions of the Communist Party then start to fight over their economic agencies, also causes an influx of massive influx of capital and people, which causes overheated as Kone now. The second now, the communications are weakening, reducing things cause massive influx of communication technologies. Allows anti-cash moves to better organize and have to overload the government, literally destroys the position by causing a good as possible. They answer this argument the wrong way. Assuming that it's about the Cuban telecommunications industry. Our argument is that the one causes an influx of communications technology into Cuba, which then allows for revolutionary leaders and people who don't like Castro in Cuba to then take him over. Specifically, this embargo stagnates Cuba's internet and communications development, lifting its laws more and Cuban harvesting first subscribe the yet U.S. administration investor reduced access to Cuban technology communications man as being recently by Helms written communications embargo has become access to Cuban market policy and Cuban access to new internet communications technology caused an overthrow of Cuban government, radical anti-cash groups caused regime failure and rights transition faster than any tangible benefits of the plan would occur. Both sides 12 Cuba would fall and fall faster with people on land as the internet the regime would fall quickly with the Middle East and Irish and you will be shocked how quickly things began to unravel. People Cuba had unfilled access to the internet and social media. Castro could not survive these ships able to link up the Cuban government wouldn't last. Now the disease advantage is on a thing on level of incentive case and appears to prove that humans are able to survive anything. Now zoom out is so not unique show to the death problems regarding zoom into confession gone for observers argue that the risk of the public may be exaggerated. No plan to transformation clerk under 12 series of research have a responsibility and no mention as any justify has just agricultural advantage. Global sustainable agriculture exists now. They do not answer this argument very well. They just say that there's Cuban agriculture now. However, ultimately, or Toludo, I'm saying so we'll just developing cool new ecological technology which solves a resilient, environmentally sound, also food system green transition away from fossil fuel production towards alternative agriculture rather than this necessarily good and resolve the impact. Now also China overwhelms the as China is the world's second largest emitter. There's no way planning itself without getting the rewards they can because China has stated that they're attempting to triple their coal emissions by coal emissions in the next few years. That's how it's all managed by the start. Managed by the start in China's and India's emissions will increase price. China and India relying heavily on the Chinese at coal plants that want to break by 2030, 80 million more than triple the electric generation. The new electricity will be coal and China's rapid growth makes use measures meaningless. Also, China's rapid growth makes use measures meaningless. Carol, a growth from China using longer use measures and consequently just with the use of goals and lead to the outsourcing of manufacturing jobs. Also, water vapor protects impact. Our machine emphasis on fire. It's not none of the emphasis zooms because all of the emphasis use old climate models. Increase the water effect for atmospheric gases, meaning it's a massive negative feedback. Nobody should be saying the lowest air emphasis now. Their economists not in nuclear argument is barely bad. It just says that Cubans have been alive for Cubans not in Cuba have been alive for foreign direct investment outside, but that is not negative because it doesn't lead to human infrastructure price pressures or human cigar markets because there is not a high demand like the U.S. needs. Now the soft power add-on. Soft power is not as versatile for there's no theory based for states that's having so rich to recover so paradises. It's never good. The U.S. is one record ranking good on its venture moves were into UN another with officials
European states, Morgan states, the Vietnamese races that just had ways in terms of just had ways in terms case as just had ways in terms case of Landia was classification caused multiple usual comments key form for refusing tensions and discussing securities to contain escalation of disagreements, losses, dispute resolution mechanism, destabilization, throws confidence in nuclear measures, this was the probability of NDCA, even in minor sections destabilization, and you have some India, Pakistan, now all new ones in North Korea, Asia, last organization, Indonesia, diplomatic relationships, keep the peace, nowhere else are we see the risk of heritage of overly blinking competitions with no security mechanisms their elements for a potential disaster. Now, the Vietnamese economy is not dying now. Mid-Never case, their economy is improving. Our evidence assumes their arguments for why Vietnam is structurally screwed, and indicates that their leaders are identifying making the necessary steps to prevent the collapse. Now, it's not a notable Vietnam is just resolving structural economic problems. Our evidence post-haste by a year here, while the Vietnamese economy is limited structural deficiencies and economic performance simulation is expanding to the essentially more possibility of Vietnam's contract deficit has contracted with its source facing onwards in near range deficits lower investment in Vietnam is remedying structural problems and economic data helps online. The recent analysis is not really a flash in the pan. Now they say that Asia fails and even if Asia is bad now, maintaining a robust and stable Vietnamese economy allows for it to improve. That's been there's only risk to make it better. Also, Asian solves key 10. Asia could be a key element which regional duties to be exploited. Vietnam regional forums have had Asia at the center have mentioned many other various nations discuss security issues. Also, if Asian isn't working, then why is Asia not a radioactive hot mess right now? If they were, right, the Chinese state would have already exploded. Asia allows these security issues to be discussed both by diffusing tensions and providing regional veterans like the regional war in this PDFA now. Also, turns the environment. Also, Asia turns the environment. Watch F12. It may be the last chance. Let's raise our to ensure the world can be fed without damaging our and security to long-range global line fresh water supply. Asian take both steps to contribute to these solutions. Global challenges Asian strives or including never without jeopardizing ecology. Asian can build global little sense of meaning of Asian has the opportunity to help save humankind. Also, I don't have anything else. Oh, yeah. Fast existential risk comes first because you can only die once, which means that you should prioritize time frame and impact calculus. That means just that outweighs on time frame. Yeah, done.
I realize there are some improvements in the Cuban economy. Which piece of 2NC evidence speaks to broad, holistic reform of the Cuban economy?
Our evidence all says that.
Can you point to me lines in the evidence?
Yeah, sure. Raul Castro's reforms are revitalizing Cuba. Is
Yeah, they're revitalizing Cuba.
Another piece of evidence says that.
Can you point to a warrant in that evidence that says?
Yeah, it says that Castro is taking reforms to liberalize the Cuban economy, including the opening of the Cuban port of Mariel, which allows for an influx of foreign capital. Now, the plan magnifies that by like 2,000%.
He's doing reforms. Shifter evidence from the 1AC says despite those reforms, further action needs to be taken.
And the Mariel evidence, which is from a month after that, says that it's working and that there doesn't need to be anything more.
Where's the warrant for why it's working? Point to a piece a warrant in that evidence.
Our evidence says that
working.
because of the Castro's liberalization policies, such as the opening of the port of Mariel, foreign companies are able to invest there now. That solves overstaffing, it solves stagnant industries, solves poverty, and solves the economy at large.
I understand a lot of this link evidence is hyperbolic. Like an influx of capital would destabilize Cuba. Which piece of link evidence has a warrant as to why Cuba would become destabilized? Because my understanding of when a country gets more money, it goes to the middle class. It might do other things to other sectors of the economy.
The Picone evidence says that it's not just about preventing an influx of capital, but it's also about speeding up democratic reforms, which then causes political instability in Cuba and different factions. Because different factions in the Communist Party would then fight over economic industries.
Which piece of evidence speaks to that?
Picone.
Point to me a line in the evidence that says that there would be some freak out with the warrant, because like all this evidence is like there would be a freak out. It would stifle democracy. There would be problems. No warrants. It's like from Washington Post staff.
Okay. If reforms happen too quickly, it causes excessive dislocation and unhappiness and destabilize the regime.
Yes. Why does that destabilization or delocalization occur? What happens? Explain to me that process.
The evidence, the part of that card that says after that is that already bureaucrats who have started to lose under the new system, they're resistant change, much to they would freak out when. Further.
Agriculture advantage, sustainable agriculture now. Which piece of 1NC or 2NC evidence says that the Cuban model is going worldwide?
The Cuban model isn't necessary, dude. That's the whole point. The agroecology is providing sufficient technology to solve it without Cuban model. That there's a transition away from fossil fuels already.
All right. Vietnam had a bad stretch in 2008. They lost economic efficiency.
Yep.
Why didn't that cause?
There's a distinction between that and total economic collapse.
Okay. So let me see if I get this internal link chain to the disad right.
Yep.
Rice exports destabilizes Vietnam. Vietnam is key to ASEAN. ASEAN, after China, India, and Russia haven't listened to them for like
they have listened to them. That's the whole point.
They freak out, and ASEAN's key to check that escalation
because it provides a regional forum to diffuse tensions in places
of exception.
Land evidence indicates that Asia is the most unstable region in the world right now.
There have been regional forums in Asia for a very long time.
Yes, and those are the only things that have prevented Asia from becoming a radioactive hot mess. That's what I said in the 2NC too. The reason why Asia isn't going crazy now is because there's a regional forum which provides a venue through which security issues can be discussed.
What's the terms environment argument?
Swadro evidence says that the U.S. needs to provide Asia needs to provide environmental leadership in the region in order to get other countries like China on board.
Speaks to that?
Huh?
Which piece of evidence is that? All right, fine. Thank you.
slowly.
The order is the conditions counterplan and then the cigars. Counterplan.
I gotta upload it.
Sorry.
Alright, I'm good. So it's the regional conditions counterplan and then the cigar counterplan?
Everybody? Conditions counterplan not going for appropriation. Justice Council Kim said just to test competition. They say multi-actor fiat is bad. It's a reason to reject the team because we're not going for the argument. That there's not a clear reason to reject no clear reason to reject the team. If anything, we should allow the two-hour response if the 1 hour extrapolates it as anything new because because there's no argument as the fear of the two-way seat. Now the cigars counterplan framing issue. The counterplan solves the entirety of the act instead of initiating normal trade relations with Cuba because it indicates a restricted trade relations with Cuba. This is sufficient to solve without removing bans on Cuban cigar that the Collins evidence view. Counterplan solves the lens of sufficiency, not necessity, and they have to prove an impact to all their solvency deficit arguments. They have not provided a solvency deficit to win any list of a linear net benefit. You should vote negative. Each vote negative. Now, the first argument that cigars on the rise now. No, the links you show uniqueness are they have not contested the overall link. The fact that the plant causes a massive increase in Cuba's massive increase in the Cuban cigar industry because U.S. people think Cuban cigars are super awesome and will buy a lot of them. Also, the already evidence here. First, the embargo makes Cuban cigar industry unprofitable, struggling now, but not down in 404 since 1960 after the socialist revolution in China and Cuba. The U.S. one of the largest premium cigar markets in the world, placing embargo on the economic agents of the neighbor. The loss of his large market took us all in the Cuban cigar industry, particularly the social regime, and in place the Cuban cigar industry self-equality control and making sure everybody giving cigars. It is the actual cigar making compromise. Also, fraud means they will inevitably collapse. Economists in 11. The system not facing bigger. Scratch that. Next argument is that there are alternative causalities. No, our evidence indicates that in Cuba, the environment perceived because they haven't been things like capitalist economies that have been initiated now, which means that there are no alternative causalities. Also, they don't read a piece of evidence in the question, which means that no read any evidence in the question, which means that there's no alternative causalities that are actually true. The next argument is that counterplan competition shouldn't be textual. No, good policy making is all about textual competition. The good policy making is not about large ideological difference between policies, rather it's about the small nitpicks, i.e. the language that people use, means that we have access to the best for counterplan competition. Also, we have proved that we are functionally competitive. I will do that on the permutation to the counterplan debate. Go there now. First, the permutation severs the phrase normal trade, which is a voting issue. Severance allows the affirmative to continue to perform and avoid all negative offense that makes big sale and anti-education, rejecting the to terms. Also, the 1AC defend that they would improve the entirety of the embargo. The counterplan explicitly said we do not remove the cigar sanction, which the plan necessary does. However, the recent amendment just says that you need to remove harm's work, which is probably not a solvency you have to do. The counterplan. Also, normal economic relations does not involve any sanction. Tongue and 7. Galton defines economic sanction and imposition of economic pain by one over to another to intervene in normal economic relations. Also, normal trade relations requires the total removal of all sanctions. My and none and economic sanctions encompass embargoes, definitions of common executive economic sanctions, or the withdrawal of normal trade relations. And normal trade cannot involve any sanctions. Like means and Susan 1, when a nation tries to impose sanctions, there are clear choice, but alternate trade relations sanctions will and trade relations return to the normal term. Normal trade relations as technical meanings for pre-sanctioned level of trade return to normal after restriction or lifted. And the counterplan is an extension of restricted trade relations. That's different from normal trade relations. Saw this card. Hinkleman and 9. Normal trade relations are those reading country friendly but not part of the regional trade agreements. In restricted and limited trade agreements, trade is permitted, but export of import of certain goods is restricted. Also, is restricted. The next argument is the plan solves environmental issue. First of all, the counterplan solves it because that's the entirety of the affirmative. No reason why the counterplan is sufficiently solve the environmental issue because it indicates that it look to other people. Also, the impact rate is just about soft power. Big answer that and the 2NC, big answer and 2NC. Also, the argument that normalization of the process is awkward. This is because you didn't read the normalization plan text. You read you have to establish normal trade relations, which we have defined a million times over and over again above, which means this definition doesn't serve to put them anywhere. The next argument is no impact on the environment. First, or I'll do the net benefit work here. The lifting the embargo causes the massive growth in Cuban cigar market. Cigar values would double the price in the U.S. is one of the largest in the world, and would vastly increase the ban proposed plan. That process the dying cigar industry thus for massive deforestation and negative environmental effects in Cuba. Also, to enact production causes mass deforestation and inevitably turns a transition event. Guys, and no date. Growing concerns expressed related to energy or fuel crisis caused by tobacco and emphasis on deforestation caused by the outstanding social soil nutrient depletion, considering uses of what tobacco production considered pros are politically different development for developing generations of employment, income, foreign exchange, other costs related effect damage public health and environment longer appears to substantially outweigh the benefit for generating tobacco consumed between 82.5 and 170.5 cubic meters of brown wood. Tobacco is in the same challenge that there's a health and environmental stability. Sorry, one sec. Okay, Vic, can you get this thing?
What?
It's in the Cuba. It's in the file. Cuba's key to global biodiversity, convention of biological diversity, and 10 Cuba has the largest biological ecosystem. Cuba is the principal center of evolution species system, as well as the most important islands world life for biodiversity country of 6,519 plants and vascular plants, estimated 226 953 animal species. Cuba has high level endemic things due to extreme climate conditions, diversity, habitat, evolution, geographical location, 50% and 40% of animal species can be found in Cuba. 10% of total fauna, 2% of vascular plants considered at risk or endangered. It was in the card you sent me. I'll just give it to my gator.
Okay. You should probably answer
Just the conventions.
Yeah, the top card.
Okay. We had.
631.
Right. Thanks.
It was in the file you sent me.
what?
It was the Cuba Keto Global Biodiversity.
Oh,
It was in the file.
okay, well, you got it.
All right.
Transitions from the prelim judge.
I did finally get it.
Sorry, do you think my computer is fine?
Yeah, you're.
I'm not sure.
I'll email it out just like for convenience later. If like someone wants to read it.
So I might have forgotten what the weakness is though. So I'm not like a little primary. Catching up to speed as well. I'm not sure how to compare the efforts today because no one really talked about the other team's epistemology. Neither team gave me a roll of ballot block. I have no idea what to do with this thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if you just bring that up to consensus. Right, that's the reason why. Right? Because it's the reason why. Oh yeah, that's a crucial thing versus I can send out after. I can download Harrison's and then add my card in.
That would be optimal, but that's fine. Thanks.
No problem. I understand.
Is this the shot? What is this? Harrison, you have like a billion people saying hi right now. On the chat.
To Harrison?
Yeah. Only Harrison.
That's brutal.
This stream is fun.
I'm gonna focus my decision on this read popularity.
I didn't watch the debate, but I really like GBS, so I voted it.
GBS was fast.
Really? Is it? I don't know. I kind of went there, so I don't know.
How's your good doing? Got it. You send it?
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna add my stuff to that.
Oh, okay.
Talk to me.
How many people have you on the panel before you okay with audio version stream? If it's 30 seconds.
I mean, isn't that Emery's phone around? We don't know that.
There's even more offenses to the phone call. Right. Because there's that. Oh, you send it?
Yeah.
Got it.
So the order is going to be agriculture, transition, topicality, the cigar pick, the rice dissad, and then the critique.
Sorry, can you do that?
So, ag, transition, topicality, cigar pick, rice dissad, critique. Alright.
Wait, can you say again? Ag, transition, T, second counterplan. Just said, okay?
Yeah.
We'll take another second.
What's up?
Separate.
Another card?
Yeah.
Okay. You can just like send that one as everything.
They're like two definitions.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to send it?
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of important.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Or kicked out, or like escorted out by the police.
Okay. There that goes. Alright. Is everybody good? Okay.
Agriculture is collapsing in status quo. The king evidence, no, and the Chicago evidence indicates there's no model for other countries to emulate, which means there's no resistance happening in the status quo. Only we solve China because we're able to transition based off cost competitiveness, which gets their economy on board. Additionally, evidence about coal is irrelevant. We can see the sequestration internal link in. Additionally, we solve 96% nitrous oxide, which matters more than the CO2 emitted by coal. Additionally, water vapor doesn't solve. Feedbacks are not positive because of things like methane go to the soft power atom. Yes, soft power is real. The Brooks evidence is terrible. It just says that it doesn't spill over, but our evidence is unique about why we would create cooperation and why that's crucial in the first place. That's the Koenig evidence that starts the discussion of multilateralism going to the transition. Shifter evidence is better than the Koenig evidence. Say reason why there's no transition now. The Koenig evidence, their Koenig evidence too old for specificity. This quote doesn't solve their evidence suggests why there are some reforms and not those reforms are effective. They're contradictory, and the current evidence from 2011 is not applicable to the current reforms. Their Torres evidence suggests in the context of Port Memorial for aggregate consumption of their economy. No, there's no telecommunication turn first. They can see that exchanges now should trigger this argument that should trigger the backlash argument. Additionally, they can see the Lopez levy argument that elite buy-in would mean that there would be no collapse of the Cuban government. Additionally, there would be no overthrow. The bullshit evidence is just speculation. It has no warrants. Additionally, the next argument is no, there would be no Baron Jane. We provide profitability to the Cuban agriculture, the transition, the Cuban NGO disease system, which only we are investing solves for zoonotic disease. Those go extinction. Only we are able to solve the Weber evidence indicates they're coming now. We prefer our time frame going to topicality. Our interpretation of the engagement is unconditional. As Smith evidence, our interpretation is best for Africa. The literature is based on unconditional engagement. It's huge. It's critical life invasion, especially in context of Latin America, because unconditional engagement frames the debate in Cuban Mexico literature. Then arbitrary dissatisfied interpretation forces us away. The literature decreases the clash in education, means that they're even if they overlimit, their overlimiting is bad because it's not predictable. Additionally, their evidence is not a term of our prefer or counter interpretation. They don't solve the CSG evidence because those additional things are just reasons why they could tack a QBQ on, and they wouldn't solve their limits or ground claims. Go on to the cigar pick. No, they aren't able to solve their first evidence. They don't solve the soft power atom. They can see the Koenig evidence that a total repeal of the embargo is otherwise we look weak in the international sphere. That means that we are not able to access the benefits to soft power, which means that they can't solve any. Which one? Okay, you didn't put that in there.
Oh, okay.
Just bring it. That means they're unable to solve this huge solvency deficit. Additionally, they can see the relative evidence. That means that the ability of us to pick and choose which parts of the embargo to lift means that Cuba would say no because they feel like they're used. Next argument is that the link controls the direction of uniqueness, but this is dumb. And this is the cigar industry is resilient and expanding large-scale demand and supply for its resiliency. This is a question of the degree of risk, whether we mitigate the net benefits, although you vote on presumption because the Counterplan is no net benefit, and instead because a statistical background of the frank evidence because of the economic recession, cigars industry is exploding in Cuba. Asia are buying huge amounts of cigar now, which triggers the price increase. Their Mueller evidence is talking about. Additionally, the frank evidence says the demand will expand throughout the future, which means that even if they win the link, the increase in demand is nevertheless proves there's no link uniqueness. The rotation to the Counterplan debate. We don't separate normal trade. Normal trade means we initiate normal trade, which means it's possible, and we don't have to meet the entirety of NTR. Additional last argument is. Total and unconditional repeal is key to soft power. That's Vivanco. And takes the unilateral embargo to enable Cuba to the garden but the government to be conservative and unwilling to receive high siding with William Washington hopes their influence might do first of the embargo nothing short of this war. The Halibut response to which the U.S. would ease the embargo response to the Cuban reforms only when the U.S. stopped acting like guy with the Cuba stop looking like David. Last argument is that the colonial evidence is the reason why the impact we are able to mitigate the impact of colonial evidence indicates that we would be able to provide regulations because we'd cooperate with Cuba as a result of lifting the embargo, which means there would be no deforestation because we provide environmental reforms. Additionally, cultural evidence indicate that goes this solves the biodiversity globally, which solves extinction, which means that even if they kick this argument, they can't escape the disadvantage they can see, which means they probably have to go for the cigar impact because there's no defense. Next argument is that there's no impact, but their resiliency there's resiliency because they're in small isolated habitats. Going to the rice, just at magnitude comes first. The small nuclear war is survivable. Complete extinction would be preferable. Soft power is able to solve the impact of this that should mitigate the China war. Additionally, the Vietnamese economy is going to collapse in the status quo. The first piece of DU evidence indicates the lack of oil means they can't sustain their economy and constitutes 30% of the GOP. The Geary evidence is just about inflation. Or evidence takes more structural problems about the economy that are not being solved now. Things like corruption. The economic collapse is inevitable. Additionally, the Asian isn't able to solve the Xi evidence is awful. Just as it could be a platform, but no, our evidence indicates that it's not able to do anything because countries aren't willing to participate in a global sphere to solve actual problems. Additionally, there's no way they can solve the environment. Their evidence just says they solve water supply. Our internal link is different. It's based off of a sustainable agriculture model only. We solve the entirety of the environment. They don't have a spillover claim.
Before we start, can I get that? Part?
Yeah. It says like marked in here, but I didn't mark it.
I got you.
So. Alright, it's called One Air Vivango. It just sent.
This guy.
625.
Hello.
What's up?
You cited this part about like picking and choosing bad means Cuba system. Which was that?
That's
CSG and Counterplan.
well, no, I cited the I think the Radcliffe evidence from the
And
other counterplan, but
all three of those parts make that.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can you do that now?
I can do the unique business.
Yeah.
You didn't read any of the two definitions.
No.
Just like normalizes a process, which means
Yeah, I said that initiate means that we don't have to do the entirety of NTR.
time. Later? Okay. Order is the Vietnamese rice dessert, and then the cigars pick, and then the wherever soft power thing was. I think agriculture. Yeah, so that.
You just said the counterplan and the ag club?
Yeah. Vietnamese rice is not going for it. I'm not sure there's any options here, but it doesn't matter because Counterplan is the entirety of the framing issue here. They make the argument that the acid impacts outweigh nuclear war because nuclear war does not have a station that should take out any impact to the soft power, to any impact to soft power, which means that 1% risk of the 1% risk of the environment impact to human deforestation should outweigh 1% risk of extinction outweighs because extinction is the animal human respiration, which places at a categorically different level than any other random death. They were the ones that made the argument that nuclear war does not have a station, which means that they should be held to it now. The cigars make framing issues that a couple of framing issues. One is they do not have the solvency, which means that there's only a risk of a net benefit. And solving the better. Often Stevens is going to keep his portable skills of cost-benefit analysis and any distinction between real and negligible is just arbitrary and self-serving, which means that even if I drop an argument, even if I drop one of the small new distinctions that they're making on the scores to benefit, it should not matter. Also, the distinction between necessary and sufficient is also conceived. The kind of necessary and sufficient is also conceived that they have to quantify an impact of the solvency deficit, which they do not do whatsoever. I will go through all of the four cards that he cites here. I will go through all the four cards that he cites here and prove that none of them actually say on total lifting of the embargo ski. Their total lifting cards. One is their CG evidence. It says that lifting House burden is key. The Counterplan does the vast majority of that. It just maintains the ban on cigars. Two is their coding evidence. This evidence says literally solvency aggregate the Counterplan. It says that quote limited easing of sanctions, economic sanctions is what is necessary, which means the Counterplan does that. And this evidence also says that that would be sufficient to solve for soft power, which means that they don't even have access to the one solvency deficit that they're going for. The Counterplan 3 is our rattle evidence indicates that we have to lift the sanctions unilaterally and unconditionally, which means which the Counterplan does because it does not make a claim about how much of it we need to lift further. But evidence sure it's the closest they get to solvency deficit. One, two arguments. One is this is in the 1ARY. The hell did not read in the 2AC if they actually had the substantial solvency deficit. All of these arguments in fact are pretty new cross allegations in the 1AR, which means that you should then because baseball strategy with the 2AC says the 1AR2 is their only impact. This is that the unilateral embargo held cash regain symbolic credibility. That is irrelevant. There's no reason why cash credibility is bad. That in the debate now the permutation. We have way too many. We are massively cardinal on this question, which means that you should vote. Which means that you should reject the permutation. The Henkelman amendment should frame when you view this debate. There is a distinction between restricted trade relations and normal trade relations. It says that restricted trade relations is the same thing as normal trade relations, except that it places restrictions on certain export or import of certain goods, which is exactly what the Counterplan does when it does the entirety of the having. So it maintains the ban on cigars. Then we read a bunch of other evidence. Let's get into evidence indicates that normal trade cannot involve any sanctions because normal trade is a return to pre-sanctions levels of trade. Now they say that their only argument here is that initiate means that they do not have to return to normal levels of NTR. However, they do not read the definition of it. What initiate even means, which means that they do not have the ability to make this argument. The US they should have said this in the 2AC. They did not, which means in the 2AC they did not. That it was impacted by the arguments about why they should get new arguments made. But they should also not be allowed to extrapolate any of these things. And then the 2AR because we made all these arguments because they should not be allowed to extrapolate any of these things in the 2AR because they were already new SDR and I didn't get a chance to respond to 3. Second response is that even if they only initiate the process, initiate means to begin, which means that they would begin the process of begin the process of allowing for normal trade. Begin the process of allowing for normal trade with Cuba. That only way that would be able to function is that the initiating process of allowing for normal trade with Cuba, which means that they would start the process of removing all economic sanctions on Cuba. Durable fiat means they would inevitably have to complete that process. The process would inevitably have to be completed. The Counterplan initiates a completely different process, which is a process of restricted trade relations with Cuba, i.e. that goes in a completely different direction because it still maintains the ban on cigars. Now, all of their arguments about how the last cash should pick and choose or whatever are just spin, which means that you should which means that you should not evaluate any of them seriously. There is no solvency after we keep the ban on frequent cigars. There's no quantifiable impact to any of that. Now, the net benefit, at least in first case, leads to a massive increase in human cigar sales, cause massive deforestation or guys. And Frankenberg says that leads to massive deforestation because they need to cut down trees to grow the tobacco in the first place. At least, our diner says that biodiversity loss is a linear thing that we are on the breakdown. Species have been dying off at an alarming rate in the class. The key hotspots and huge unique issues like now. First, they say plaintiffs environmental regulations. First is the one area that you're still not allowed. Two is it does not solve because there's no an economic incentive for allowing the cigar industry to develop. Also, none of their emphasis in the context of cigar ban. It's all in the context of agricultural restrictions, which is not what tobacco, farming, which is not what tobacco farming is, especially since it is a large part of their industry. More you're emphasizing because the price will literally double, and that production would be massively higher. Now they read evidence which says the Cuban cigars, Cuban cigar, the Cuban cigar industry is high now. That is ridiculous. We read evidence from this year, a few days ago. It's from April 4th, which indicates that Cuba, ever since the embargo was in place, their quality control and also the lack of access to the largest cigar market in the world means the Cuban cigar industry has massively suffered, and the Cuban cigar industry has been massively suffering. That has been hugely compromised. As Ramadan evidence, the Cuban cigar industry is fundamentally unsustainable. I don't think I dropped any of these arguments, even if I did drop a small argument as to how the status results. They have no offensive argument as to why they would do anything good. Whereas we have evidence which indicates that Cuba's biodiversity hotspot, it causes global ripple effects, and also our diner evidence indicates the biodiversity collapse causes extinction. Terms are warming impacts because terms are warming at a terminal level and much faster because deforestation would spill over globally quickly.
We have like 240 acres in, is that right?
Yeah.
So the counterplan repeals Helms Burton.
Totally just left the row.
Yes. I can go grab them.
Yeah, it's alright. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, that's us.
That's alright. You're fine. You don't worry.
You're the worst.
Alright. Ag, Ashawn, counterplan.
Ag,
You're
DA.
right. We do.
Okay. I know, I'm just kidding.
Guys wanted to leave so quickly.
You should have seen the black.
Oh, he's in the bathroom. Oh, but if we don't start now, so I feel now like that. Even like state
We
police.
have 53 minutes.
Oh, we got.
Why are you so afraid of police?
I knew things.
We'll fight over one.
I'm shaking still.
Where did you do this? No. Yes, yes.
I believe it.
All right. Are we good?
Soft power always is a controlling impact. At the end of this debate, you'll have to look at impacts versus solvency deficits, but they've made a technical concession that is pretty damning new. Chris said at the top of the Echelon flow that soft power solves emerging economic crisis because the Jervis evidence is specific to the international community and people latching on to American security guarantees. The card is specific to if we don't want people to run against the dollar or get on board with American priorities, we need to increase representative governance, which is what the Koenig evidence says we does as per our internal link. This outweighs the minuscule cigar net benefit because people will latch on to American security guarantees, so there will be no internal link to escalation, which gives us the vital internal link to the Asian war impact, which proves there is a structural try or die scenario. Asian war causes counterbalancing, which is an impact that we latched onto via soft power, which makes it an easy affirmative ballot, because when you say that soft power solves for something and then the negative team doesn't answer that claim, a true or a technical concession is a true argument, which means you latch onto that impact, which proves that it's try or die for an emerging Asian war scenario. Even if you don't like that argument, soft power alone should outweigh the minuscule net benefit because the Jervis evidence is specific to the international community, which puts checks and stopgaps against environmental destruction. The internal link chain to the dissent is so large and minuscule, and there are so many intervening actors who will be able to solve for disease. But soft power, we have read evidence specific to the U.S. embargo, and people will not latch on unless we do the entirety affirmative. Now, go to the Echelon flow. We didn't concede that nuclear war doesn't cause extinction. Chris made a different argument. We didn't say that nuclear war doesn't cause extinction. Soft power is a global impact filter, and we have, and even if nuclear war doesn't cause extinction, just kick the North Korea impact and evaluate the soft power debate. The Jervis evidence is specific to the international community stopgaps and people latching on to American security guarantees, which makes war or any economic problem virtually impossible because people will latch on to other economic priorities. It causes dispute resolution mechanisms which solve for the environment impact. Additionally, he just asserted that we said nuclear war doesn't cause extinction. No, we didn't. Chris said something different at the top of the 2AR. Now go to the counterplan. I am going to make this very clear. The card that we read in the 1AR says any approach short of the plan results in Castro crackdown and loss of soft power. I'll read you lines from the evidence. Koenig evidence goes way farther than their evidence. Reward good research skills. GBS has got really good evidence as to the context of soft power. Their solvency deficit isn't meaningful. The U.S. requires a policy that will increase soft power and put the Cuban government towards representative governance, limiting easing of sanctions like the their counterplan. It's limited easing because they don't initiate the entire embargo. The government of Cuba would adjust to gradual changes and maintain control, removing the pressure for market reform and democratic governments. This is a reason why this is a solvency deficit, because if Cuba retains control, then we don't access the vital internal link to soft power because Cuba still holds control of that process. Then the U.S. The card goes on to say the U.S. should develop a bilateral trade agreement, which is only the affirmative. The goal would be achieve normal trade relations. The U.S. would gain in soft power, and it makes a uniqueness claim that our soft power is collapsing now and we need to do something. Now the Vivenco evidence is the tiebreaker. It makes a hyperbolic argument about David and Goliath. It says specifically nothing short of the unilateral embargo will work because people look at American security guarantees in terms of hyperbolic language. They see it on CNN. They see it in different legislative forums. And if we give Cuba a small priority instead of unilaterally lifting the embargo, then Castro will be able to hold on to the embargo and use that as a bargaining chip, which proves there is a meaningful solvency deficit. The counterplan you should call for the Koenig, CSG, and Vivenco evidence, which proves that there is a distinction between the soft power that the plan initiates and the soft power that they assert doesn't solve. There is no impact defense argument to soft power, which proves that it is try or die. They said it was a new argument. This is justified because the 2NR are at 1,000 new cards. You had 5 off and you had 3 different ethical frameworks. New arguments are justified because you should have seen the solvency deficit coming because it was in the 1AC. Even if this is a new argument, it's justified because the 1AR is becoming disconstructive. The subpoint B that he said was the unilateral embargo kills Castro credibility. Yes, the solvency deficit is Castro credibility. He'll hold on to sanctions, and the action of the counterplan won't be specific. Now, little risk is zero risk. I'm going to beat the cigar net benefit one step at a time. The deforestation impact is silly. If we win, that it's happening now because the cigar industry is increasing. That makes deforestation inevitable. It's a framing question. He goes conceded. The risk of the net benefit is infinitesimally small, which you should vote F on the tangible risk of the soft power impact. 3 arguments here. Cigar industry is explaining. Frank evidence is because of the economic recession says Cuba's cigar industry is exploded because everyone was stressed out. Statistics are really conclusive. Additionally, places like Asia are buying huge amounts of cigars now, which triggers the price increases their Mueller evidence is talking about. Additionally, their Madonna evidence says an analysis of aggressive economic data just a reason why embargo hurts the cigar industry. However, prefer evidence because it takes into account the largest industrial statistics independently. The Frank evidence says that demand will expand throughout the future, which proves that even if they win the link, the increases in demand is inevitable, which means there's no link uniqueness. Now, the action of the counterplan promotes environmental leadership. Even if there's no solvency deficit to the counterplan, the solvency deficit is representative governments, which proves that the action of the affirmative would increase environmental solution sustainability, which proves intervening actors check the stopgap in inevitable deforestation because it latches on to key Latin American nations who want to get on board with environmental priorities, where it increases Pagovian taxes, and intervening actors in other countries can solve for deforestation. Lastly, we solve the terminal impact. Causal evidence are reasons why regulations stop environmental destruction would happen. A 1% risk of a solvency deficit outweighs because we have reasons why the counterplan, the action of the affirmative stops the net benefit. There's virtually no risk in the net benefit. And a solvency deficit.
Good speech, man.